But my understanding is they've used some kind of royal decree to bypass the resistance in Parliament, so they've bypassed it. 500,000 illegals.
I think Europe ended this week. Hungary, it has to be unanimous, and Hungary said no, and the EU just overrode it.
The Irish culture and history, the reality of Ireland as a nation is going to get pummeled, if not destroyed.
It looks like there's going to be revolution, civil war in the United States. And I did discuss with my guests whether it was Trump who was stoking that or the enemies of Trump. In this video, we're going to be talking about what's happening in Europe with regards to revolution, with regards to civil war, with regards to war. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for watching and commenting and liking. Please continue to do so. It helps the channel grow and it helps beat the algorithm. I am joined by E.M. Burlingame and Ivor Cummins. Thank you, guys. I'll have all the links in the description below. It's 2043 on Wednesday, the 28th of January. And Ivor, I'm going to start with you because in the previous video, you mentioned how the Spanish Prime Minister, the Socialist Prime Minister, is giving amnesty to 500,000 illegal immigrants. There's an article in Zero Hedge today that I read. At the same time, while this proposal in Parliament to do likewise has been stalled for a year because it doesn't have enough support. And then I know I have an idea of what's happening in Ireland because I follow Ireland closely. Beautiful country, beautiful people. And of course, in Europe and England with a massive influx of illegals. So take it away, Ivor. What is going on and where's this going to lead to?
Yeah, well, I start with the Spanish thing. I only saw it earlier, but my understanding is they've used some kind of royal decree to bypass the resistance in Parliament, so they've bypassed it. 500,000 illegals, and they want to naturalize them and give them citizenship. So in a way, that's not just insane. That's not just the usual Kalergi plan nonsense that's been going on for the last few years across the whole of Europe. And that's almost rubbing people's noses in it. You'd almost wonder, do they want a little bit of unrest? And then they can bring in some draconian laws on the back of the unrest. I often wonder that. But Ireland, von der Leyen witch.
Sorry,
right?
Ivor,
Von der Leyen.
Ivor, sorry, before you go to Ireland, one of the things that's just occurred to me, it's actually an incentive for more people to come into Spain.
That
Well,
too. Yeah.
My sense on it is that, one, we don't know who these 500,000 are. I guarantee you they're not just random 500,000 people. And this gives them free movement in the EU.
Oh, God.
So step number 7 of the financialist kill chain is collapse and abandonment, where they lock in all of the steel, as we were talking about America. So these 500,000 could be war fighters. We've been at war around the world for 27 years, 28 years on nonstop. It isn't just, guys in uniforms, formal uniforms that have been getting combat experience and combat leadership experience.
Yeah, it's a possibility. It's an extension. But even if not that, it's highly damaging and it's encouraging others to come in, which is a great kind of putting the flag up the flagpole. I mean, in Ireland, just to give an example, I get back to von der Leyen witch. No, I'll do her first. She's just come out doing a huge deal, gushing about it with the Indian government and looking at, and it's going to open massive doors. So we've had half of Africa in, and we've had all the others, and now they're going to max out on Indians. And I like Indians, and I have no problem with any race or creed or ethnicity, but they're performing a genocide of sorts on the European nations and destroying all diversity, history, and culture. That's what it is. It's an act of violence. And they're doing it.
War.
It's a war, essentially, or as Michael Yon said, it's an invasion, it's a war. And they're doing it with impunity. Now, if you look at the ratios, not just on X, because I know X is quite awake, that's one of its huge advantages, but even on Facebook, which is full of morons, generally speaking, the ratios that these posts from von der Leyen or any of these other posts are getting are astonishing. And yet they don't care. And they do know they're getting ratioed. So it's in your face. For Ireland is a disaster. The birth rates in the invasion people are obviously way higher, and the Irish birth rates have dropped. So within the next few decades, the Irish culture and history, the reality of Ireland as a nation is going to get pummeled, if not destroyed. And the problem is, it's improving. This is an important point. The terms racist, far right, antiseptic, or whatever, they had a lot of power, and the Irish were terrified of them. To look at it on a positive note, now people are beginning, finally, and it's so important, they're shrugging off all these slurs from the globalist network media that have been hurled at them to shut them up. So we are beginning to break through where people are now saying they don't care if you're called a racist because they're only talking common sense. So that's a positive thing. The people are awakening, but it's really at the wire now. I mean, it's getting almost too late for the masses to wake up and push back. But last positive note, Poland and Hungary and some more are doing an incredible job. And like the point in the last discussion we had, they are test cases proving there's a better way. So they're getting a lot of heat, just like Sweden got during COVID flu. So it's interesting to watch it happening, but people are waking up.
Yeah. This theft regime that is this superordinate liberal democracy, which is anything but, has to lock in the steal. It has to lock in a century and a half of theft. And you're going to have to physically remove them because obviously they don't get put in positions by votes. Vanderland didn't get voted in. So this superordinate structure and system that's doing all of this with the support of actual countries and local, the local governments, et cetera, is going to have to be physically removed. There is no other way. And then in order to do that, well, this is what we just saw up in Minnesota, right? Minneapolis. They'll use their imported thugs and people who are all about the imported thugs to fight back on their behalf because they're not going to have the military or much of the law enforcement on their side if the people rise. So they've imported entire armies to be body bags more than to fill body bags more than anything else so that they can do, the very arguments that were made about Minnesota and Minneapolis, jackboots and thugs and, government thugs and Nazis and all of this. So Europe is going to have to first off, Europe's going to have to break back up. The European Union has to end. That has to end. And governments are going to have to be taken down by force. Now, does that have to be violent force? Not necessarily, but you have to march on the government and you have to occupy the government. Remember the Occupy Wall Street movement? They went on for several years and then they freaked out and they kicked woke off. And I think that accelerated their whole plan, by the way, the Occupy Wall Street. You're going to have to remove these governments through physical force. They will not go any other way.
We're just on that. Sorry, Ivor, 1 second, just on that. There's also the force of withholding tax, which is a strategy that people can use in Britain through no tax for war, taxforwar.com, where it's legally, lawfully, peacefully withhold taxes from central and local government. And that, Ivor, might be a conversation for me to have on your channel one day soon.
Absolutely. It sounds great because I know the onesie twosie individuals who fight through the old laws and avoid that. It doesn't really leave a mark. It needs to be a populist movement with the power of numbers. But the Occupy Wall Street, you said, EM, it's funny, one of my favorite gag cartoons of all time. And I got it actually way, way back, and I often feature it. It just shows a Wall Street guy, in his office with his feet up on a chair on the phone. And behind him at the window, there's Occupy Wall Street protesters. Bring down the banks. The banks are the problem. And the caption just reads, just introduce them to identity politics. And it was so true. They literally got into all the people protesting, they funded them, and they diverted them to trans crap and racism crap. And it was very effective. But on a positive note again, I want to finish on a positive note. Now the people are vastly more awake albeit not enough, but they're vastly more awake than back then. COVID flu has started a pretty huge awakening. Hence, they need censorship now. The censorship is coming in thick and fast, and they know they got a problem.
Yeah.
Well, they have another problem with the taxation. We have a problem on the taxation side. Tax revolts have historically been very powerful. They're not anymore. Most people, something like 60% of people in the United States are on support, some form of government support.
Yeah.
They're not paying taxes.
Well,
that's why they want UBI.
Correct. And they're printing money out of nothing here. Like the new system moving to in the United States, our economic system is going to be government debt by design. Stablecoin has to, for every dollar issue of debt, that you have to buy $1 of US debt. Well, what does that do? It makes the US debt the economy.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, by its, you can put all the complex mechanisms and structures, et cetera. So what does it mean? What it means is that the government is printing money. It doesn't need our money anymore. That's why they're talking about doing away with taxes here in the United States.
And then,
right?
And then Ian, bringing it back to Europe, and I do recommend people go and watch the conversation that Ivor and I had about the revolution, civil war in the United States. But what they're doing in Ireland and Britain and mainland Europe is slowly destroying farming.
Yeah.
So removing our capacity to feed ourselves.
Yeah.
It would be another way they can offer us rationing through a digital ID and then a UBI, like you said, so we become dependent upon the government. And then I just want to go back to the censorship, because there's the attack by the British government and the EU against X, and then also the censorship through, you got to, to protect the children. To protect the children, they have, before they go on social media, they have to prove their age, which means everybody has to prove their age, Ian, because I suspect you're barely over 16. So I need to see age verification for you, Ian, right?
Yeah.
So that everybody has to do that, give away their identity. And in the UK, they're talking about VPNs being registered. So therefore or made illegal or something, but they're going to be managed by the government, which means that Britain can stand shoulder to shoulder with North Korea and Russia and Pakistan and other countries that allow for the free flow of information. But where they lose out is there are leaks. And I just want to give a shout out, sentinel.co, sentinel.co, a decentralized VPN that can't be captured or regulated. Okay, I'm not connected to the company. I've been following them for years. Sentinel.co. Oh, am I back? Am I back?
You're back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Back. Okay, sentinel.co. Yeah. But all their plans will have these little leaks.
They won't work. It won't work. So, I've been in tech for 40 some odd years, from semiconductors all the way up to networks, telecom systems and services and all of these things, algorithmic trading, all kinds of things that I participated in that time. On a thermodynamics basis alone, the panopticon doesn't work. They can't energetically dissipate the heat created by the surveillance state. It's not possible according to the laws of physics. So that's just the heat. That's much less the energy production, distribution, computation.
Sorry, Ian, forgive me for interrupting. What do you mean the heat? What?
So every bit of when you are moving electrons around, or you're reading and writing to an electron to a spot on a drive, even a solid state drive, you are generating heat. You're generating more heat than the natural electricity itself, than the heat put off by the electricity. So anytime you move an electron around a circuit board, anytime you move electron through a processor, anytime you read or write from memory or a hard drive, you are generating excess heat. I built data centers. That was my first funded company that I got funded, was building data centers 26 years ago. And before that, I built them for the banking industry. So everything that they do generates heat. This is why they're talking about having to use so much water. And they're talking about moving the computations into space, et cetera. But the point is on a computational basis and on a heat distribution, heat dissipation basis, their surveillance grid is not possible. It's why they're talking about getting populations down below 1 billion, because now the computationally, it does start to become possible.
Ivor,
Well,
I'm
they are
interested in your
bad.
take. I'm interested in your take as an engineer on what
Well, I
Ian
mean,
has
I haven't
said.
done those calculations, but we know those server farms take enormous energy, and that's just for the current operations.
Yeah.
AI is going to be screaming for more. These same oligarchs and sociopaths, obviously at the top, they suddenly don't care about the climate pseudoscience disaster that's going to befall us. Even though in Ireland, there was a report came out a year or two ago, and they said 30% of Ireland's electricity needs could be just server farms in the coming years. And like the guppies don't seem to ask the question, hold on a minute, what about the climate disaster? Like they don't care. And I'm sure if you scale it up to the complexity of tracking every human and bring it up a whole order of magnitude, I guess it just gets insane. These people are psychopaths. I mean, I'll close with that.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, they
they
don't
don't
care.
have to succeed. What they have to do is they have to make it look like they're succeeding. Right.
True.
So this goes back to, this is hydraulic despotism. It's a form of hydraulic despotism, right? In that the it's the same thing as the Egyptians believing that the pharaoh could control the Nile. So how did the pharaoh do that? Well, they studied, they spent a good amount of time and energy and resources studying the patterns of the Nile, so that they could have a better prediction as to what the Nile was going to do. And then they had the narrative went out through the churches and the temples, etc., to articulate the will of the pharaoh and what would happen if the pharaoh was displeased. Well, the pharaoh had no ability whatsoever to control the flooding of the Nile, but they could fake it.
Yeah,
And that's what this
that's it.
panopticon is. They don't have to, it doesn't have to work. They just have to put enough money into it. It has to be complete, sophisticated enough. And they have to threaten us with it enough. And then actually go after some people here and there, right? To make it look like it works.
Yeah.
And before social media, that's why they're trying to censor that like hell. They, of course, own the media. So they'll be able to showcase all these examples and make everyone believe it based on a series of examples.
Right.
It's the perfect chilling effect. It's just perfect. But I mean, in Ireland, recently with the X tobacco, so Grok AI, when someone asked it to, I don't know, put some young person in a bikini, Grok AI, in fairness, didn't predict that was coming, and it kind of went ahead and did it. Big deal. They immediately just put in changes. But you had all the puppeticians who report to the globalists in Ireland and Starmer all saying we need to get rid of X Grok. In fact, we need to get rid of X, right? Based on this nonsense. So, and all the anti-money laundering, they always use pedophilia as an excuse to lower the amount of cash, to bring in controls. They always use, and who was it who said, you'll probably know EM, always accuse your enemy of what you yourself are actually doing.
Well, Darvo.
I mean, they are
Yeah.
using child abuse to justify their totalitarian insanity against us. And if any group is disproportionately involved in child abuse, it's them, clearly.
Well, and money laundering, right?
Yeah,
They are
too.
the biggest money launderers on the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, these inconsistencies and hypocrisies are a tell. Like I think the biggest activity that damages the environment is war. They never talk about how that's going to damage the environment and the CO2 that gets generated out of, mining metals and moving them across the world, making weaponry, dropping them on people in foreign lands or wherever, right? That's pretty bad environmentally, right? And then they don't talk about the open borders being this gift for child traffickers. how easy can it be to bring children in and sell them again and again and again and again until that child is worn out and then use the organs or the adrenochrome or whatever? So it's just pure hypocrisy. Now we know that. And I think conversations like this, like you two and this channel, and of course your channel, Ivor, and your fabulous articles, EM, are a great resource for people to wise up. Go on, Ivor.
Oh yeah, I was going to say just along those lines, some would argue, and I can understand the argument, that if the people broadly are gullible enough to fall for this nonsense, every single thing they come out with, from the pseudoscience to the COVID flu to all of the other self-contradicting lunacy, if the people are willing to swallow that, they almost deserve what they get. And it's a harsh point. And the defense of the people is they've had decades and decades of military level propaganda reprogramming them to give them a cognitive bias beyond belief. That's in their defense. But I just think now, through your channel, my channel, EM's articles, and all the other people, we could mention hundreds, we should be able to break that cycle. Hard and all as the psychology is to break through, if we get enough momentum, I think we're on our way, and then we'll have the tipping point phenomenon. Hopefully, let's all pray for that. A tipping point where suddenly ordinary, not NGOs, what do they call them? NPCs or normies will begin to feel comfortable talking at the water cooler, in the bar, talking about the most important things for them and their children and grandchildren's futures. And they'll start stopping watching 24-hour football and all the nonsense about celebrities and all the junk they throw at us. Start talking about what really affects you and your family's future. I mean, that's all we need to get people to do.
The only thing that is real is human violence. It is the only real asset. Everything else is a derivative of it. And at some point, the people are either going to use that asset and remind the liberal democratic system, see the liberal democracy for what it really is, that it was always a fraud, it was always a sham, it was always an illusion. And it's an illusion sustained on our gullibility and our willing suspension of disbelief. And it has all been sustained by nonstop violence, either directed against your own people by your own government, or, you know, being sent away to go war on somebody else. So at some point, we're either going to stop being gullible and stop listening to all these other things as if they're real, because they're not. We're going to remember that we and our physical capacities are the only real asset. Now they want to transition to computers and robots and all of that as quickly as they can because they're concerned with that. However, that could run away too, because now we got Microsoft robots fighting Google robots, you know, just the same as if it was humans. And it's even worse because there's no inherent, you know, constraint in the robots. So this goes to all out nonstop war, regardless whether there's humans or not. Right? They call it the forever war. That's literally what they call it. So at some point, we're either going to recognize that we are the only real asset. And I've written on this as well, several pieces. And we're going to use our physical capacities to remove this system and remove these people through force, because that is the only way to make it, you know, to make the change. And we also have to, at the same time, to that, get over the biggest psyop of all, which is liberal democracy.
Yeah. And you know, Ian, this is the recent kind of, my thing recently is this idea of making a documentary, a docudrama on tragedy and hope, using 101 from Joe Plummer, joeplummer.com, Plummer, not the pipe guy, Joe Plummer, free book, free audio book. And I just think if large amounts of people read Tragedy and Hope 101, although it only brings us up to the 2000s, doesn't matter. Once you read that book and the closing chapters on Operation Gladio and what's been actually going on, fully referenced, no conspiracy theory. Once you read that book, a normie's perspective on the whole world is completely changed. So that's
I
my
think it's
mission in the
happening.
next while.
Awesome. I think it's happening. My suspicion, and I'm going to take February off. I'm just exhausted and tired. I'm going to take February off. I'm going to meditate, going to get healthy and relax a bit. But I'm also going to just kind of let some things stew. But I suspect that this artificial reality we've been living in since the 1600s collapsed already. I think it collapsed in the 1960s. And they've just been, feeding more and more and more resources in there to keep the illusion that it's still functioning, it's still working, it's still going. And now we're running out of even our ability to fake it. And I think that's what we're watching. Mm-hmm.
What was the point, Ian, that it collapsed in the 60s? Was it the shooting of JFK? Was it the Vietnam War? Was it 1968?
Well, it's always, again, liberal democracy was always an extractive, self-enslaved system, right? Tax, wage, and debt slavery. And by the 1960s, they'd already taken so much out of it that it couldn't sustain. This is why they had to go off the gold standard, twice in the early part of the last century, is because the Napoleonic Wars, the Great Wars, the nonstop warfare that is liberal democracy, because that's what liberal democracy is. It's war. It's war against your own people, and it's organizing and coordinating everything for never-ending wars, conflicts, and wars, and wars that aren't meant to be won, and that are at 10 times the cost a war needs to be. By the end of World War II, there wasn't any more to take.
Yep.
There wasn't anything more to steal, right? And by the 1960s, it was just collapsed. It just collapsed under its own weight. That's why they're talking about doing away with the nation state and the Great Reset and all of these things, is because the liberal democratic lie 400 years on just can't sustain anymore. It can't be patched up anymore. It can't be faked anymore, right? So now they're trying to move to quite literally feudalism.
Yeah.
And as we talked, I think, about America, we're already at a feudalistic system in the form of family offices, multifamily family offices, etc.
Yeah.
So they have to collapse it. And in order to lock in the steel and to collapse it, they need us to go to violence.
Which is why they want to drive us to war. But I just want to make a point about the violence and how I got involved in the anti-lockdown demos in London, and I kept going regularly, and I noticed them getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, despite the lack of publicity in the mainstream media. Plenty of publicity for BLM and Just Stop Oil and those AstroTurf campaigns, but not this authentic grassroots campaign. And then the government in the UK said, we're not going to do vaccine mandates. So that sort of physical activity was really, I think, really powerful. But the physical activity they want to impose upon us in Europe is by sending our sons and daughters to go to war against Russia, which is why notaxforwar.com.
But they don't mind if it's civil wars either. See, they know they can't sustain the illusion anymore. So they need, it's exactly like a divorce. The unhealthy spouse knows that the marriage can't continue, but they need you to be the bad guy. And so they force you into a position where there's no other recourse but for you to file for divorce. And now you're the bad guy because you filed for a divorce, and now they go to war with you, and now they fight you, and now they try to get concessions and wealth and assets out of you. Meanwhile, the whole time making you the bad guy. Never mind, they're the ones that force the collapse of the marriage and the relationship, such that, and then threatened you, literally threatened, like with being accused of domestic abuse, when that would be the last thing you would ever do. So they force you to a situation where you have to be the bad guy, but they do it because it can't sustain, right? The whole thing, and they can't admit that, they can't accept that, they can't say that. So they need to force us into a situation where our only recourse is the use of force.
And in this fourth turning, Great Reset, whatever you want to call it, what tends to happen through all the chaos, you get the rise of strongmen. Now, you can complain all you want about them, but Putin is a good example of the strong man. Trump is an example of the rising
Yeah.
strongman. We leave aside the debate whether he's a fake strongman that's really with the bad guys, but we leave that aside. And Jinping and that structure at the top in China is essentially
Yes.
strong.
Yes.
So
Or Viktor
it's
Orban,
interesting.
Yes.
uh, um,
Yeah.
Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso.
Well, I think Europe ended this week, I think it is, when the EU just ignored Hungary's no vote.
Yeah.
I think right there the EU did the EU. There's no way you can argue whatsoever that there's an EU anymore when structure and rules and all of this. When Hungary, and it has to be unanimous, and Hungary said no, and the EU just overrode it.
Yeah. But
So what is
again,
it?
even if you cut the chicken's head off, you can keep running for a while, right? But yeah, I see your point.
Well, the EU
But they're
isn't
still
going.
not going to
EU's
go.
not. EU's not going to last. It's not going to
No.
last. It's far too
It can't be faked
weak.
anymore. It's too expensive. All these things are just too expensive to fake anymore. That's
Yeah.
the reality
Yeah.
of it, right?
And the climate nonsense pseudoscience. A guy told me who's big in energy, really, really good guy. And he told me a year or two ago, he said, it's over, Ivor. And
Yeah.
I said, well, hold on a minute. Look at the media. 60% of people still believe in the nonsense. 80% of journalists polled believed a couple of years ago in the nonsense. He said, no, 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 no. Financially, it's over.
Yes. Yeah.
The absurdity of what's happening is now beginning to become apparent. He said it's dead.
$20 trillion.
Yeah,
20 trillion. Just
crazy.
Wow.
So insane.
Yes, and meanwhile, Trump. We're not going to go into this, right? But Trump, his Truth Social, has taken possession of a nuclear fusion company that's going to be building nuclear fusion power station in the United States. We have the emergence of new technologies, and I'm actually going to be interviewing someone from Promethean Action about nuclear fusion. So do watch out for that. But
so I'm not sure that nuclear fusion works.
well, okay,
I
that's
know.
fine,
I
Ian.
think
I got no
no.
brains. I can't.
Fission, yes, but the fusion one, right? There's no such thing as 0 point energy. It's
Okay,
not
Ian,
possible. Yeah.
I was just plugging a video that's coming.
Hey,
I got nothing to say to you, right?
Yeah.
hey, it works inside in the middle of the sun. Maybe.
We'll
Maybe.
bring the sun over, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think is going to happen is there's going to be more and more holds. I remember, when during lockdown, people come up with, I probably did this equivalent in Ireland and other parts of Europe, but the NHS COVID app, that you could get a fake app
Yeah.
on your Android phone, possibly
Yeah.
your iPhone, and then when you had to show it, you could show it. And if whoever was checking it pressed a button, it took you to a web page which said, "Oh, it's not in service right now." So it took you to
Yeah.
a fake web page. So
Yeah. And
people will
there
come up
were a
with all
couple.
sorts of innovation.
Yeah, and they're even like what you did was one route was you got a friend who did take the juice and you changed it to your name. But if they wanted to scan, what you could do was, let me see how we did this. I'll tell you what it was. Say your friend is Joe Murphy, right? You got his cert and you showed it. But of course, then they want to see ID to make sure you're Joe Murphy because it will scan correctly and work. So all you needed was a fake ID. And that's trivially easy to do. So you just get a
Yes.
driver's license. Now, it wouldn't work in an airport, but you only need it for a bouncer or a guy in a restaurant, really. But travel was a problem. Travel was difficult when they did that to actually
But
go
I
through high security.
But I think either they're going to bring out, people will create ways of bypassing digital IDs
Yeah,
and
I,
age
I,
verification. Get a decentralized VPN like Sentinel.co and then show yourself to be in a freedom loving country like North Korea. Sentinel.co works in North Korea, by the way.
oh wow, that's pretty
Yes.
good.
So so then you can bypass the age restrictions here. Like in the UK, we're not allowed to look up RT. RT.com is banned in the UK.
Same in Ireland.
Oh, in Ireland as well. Well, just use your
And
Sentinel.co VPN. to
Is
switch
what's
to.
banned? Rumble is banned in France.
No, I think that's
WhatsApp, they
changed now.
arrested. Oh,
Rumble,
has it?
yeah, Rumble has changed now. It's but BitChute is banned in Britain, even though it's owned by a British guy. So, yes, you can't get BitChute in Britain, but all of
Yeah.
that stuff will have holes, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you can testify to that through your experience with
Oh yeah.
with tech.
It's
Mm.
all fake. It's all fake.
And
It's all faked. Like everybody's scaring about Palantir. Palantir sucks. But they put a lot of money into it, and there's a lot of big names like the CIA and others that pay $1 billion or a year for it. So it sure seems like it's very good, but it sucks. Palantir is good at one thing. It's good at identifying threat finance, money laundering, et cetera, because that's what it was designed for from its inception. For anything else, it sucks. The only reason that it's good is there's very expensive and very good analysts that come with the subscription.
right.
The analysts are really good,
and it's got great PR, just like
the
climate science.
It's the Pharaoh and the flooding of the Nile, man. It's just, I keep thinking that over and over and over again, most of this stuff. But again, they can't afford to continue even the illusion anymore.
It is crumbling. It is crumbling. Just like, CO2 has really bad press. Plants don't have the same press as CO2 does.
They are regreening, though.
We are regreening. Thank heavens for plant food such as CO2. Ivor, thank you so much, guys. I'll have the links in the description below where people can find you. And everybody, please, thank you so much for watching. Comment, share, like, subscribe, thumbs up, all that business. And I'll see you soon. All the best. Bye-bye.